This is episode number 1 of the Uncle Eddie TV program. The concept of the Uncle Eddie TV show is something that I've been thinking about for quite some time. And recent events around the nation kind of provoked me to step forward and go ahead and do this thing. Concept is pretty straightforward. Uncle Eddie has conversations with people in Lafayette, in the community we live in, for the purposes of enlightening me. And I have learned during my years here at AOC that when you make yourself more aware of the people that are around you, the better it is for you, whether you like them or not. You have a better society once you start to get to know those people. So the Uncle Eddie TV program is going to have conversations. This is the first one. Tonight I'm talking to an entirely black forum, a group. I sent out invitations to a large number of people. Frankly, I didn't get a huge response, but then late in the game, a lot of people volunteered to step forward, and we're going to get around the table and hear from them in just a few minutes. In later episodes of Uncle Eddie TV, we're going to talk to a variety of people, some police, some gay people, maybe a teacher or two, talk about some gender problems with pay scales and so forth, some criminal justice issues, lots of things we want to talk about. But they're not going to be debates, they're not going to be lectures, they're not going to be experts, they're going to be people with, no pun intended, but with skin in the game. Since we're talking about skin right off the bat, let's just go to the issue that's pretty obvious right here. Everybody in here tonight is here because I asked you to come tell me in so many words what's up with the black experience in Lafayette right now. I look at the community, I'm engaged, I participate in some groups and some organizations. A couple years ago, the mayor had a commission on diversity and I got involved. So I pay a little attention, and from my perspective, that white guy, I live on the south side of town. Don't live in River Ranch, but I'm close enough to brag about it. But I look at the game and I look at race in Lafayette and I talk to the people that I know, people of color. Y'all are doing okay, right? Everything's cool. We don't really need to have this conversation. I'm wasting my time. Is that, okay, I'm hearing some laughter and I was hoping I'd get something. I'm not an expert at sociology, I'm not an expert at hosting, but I'm going to say, the way we're going to do this tonight, rather than me going through and say introduction, come on in, don't be afraid. You're missing the rules, so pay attention closely. If you have something to say, speak up, and when you're through speaking, pass it over to somebody else just by point. You'll know who wants to talk. Don't come back to me to moderate. I'm just going to try to keep us on task a little bit. So when the first time you speak, tell us who you are so everybody knows who we're going to be mad at later on. And maybe instead of being mad at everybody, you're going to make me a little bit smarter. Now, for the people at home tuning in, there's going to be some information on the bottom that you can tune in or get on to Facebook and write your comments there. And I will either elect to ignore those comments or I'll respond to you in public here this way. So, with all that said, I'm going to acknowledge a couple things that we're not going to beat to death the fact that there is such a thing as pretty serious institutional racism. We're not going to argue about that. That no black person starts off at the same place as any white person. That's a given, so don't tell me about that. But in Lafayette, as it relates to the rest of the thing, and you guys are young, I'm going to pick on you right off the bat. You feel like you got a target painted on your back? Young brother in Lafayette?
It's in situations.
Because of race?
Yeah, it's in situations.
You do? And Russell, you work with a lot of young people. What's the vibe on the street amongst younger African-American males, particularly in relation to the things that have happened in the last, say, 6 months?
Unconsciousness, unawareness in a lot of them. A lot of our black males are unconscious and they're unaware. The younger generation. We do have a lot that are aware, but I would say that the majority are unaware.
See, for me, that's awesome news. If they are unaware, that means they're not troubled by it. We're cool. Now, that's going to be BS, right? Am I wrong to say that? If they're unaware, we're cool?
I wouldn't say so.
Good.
I mean, ignorance might be bliss for some people. Just because you're unaware doesn't mean you're unaffected.
Bingo. We're all affected.
Yeah.
And I'm affected by the fact 30% of my community is marginalized. And frankly, I'd like to see people used as resources. We're not taking care of your brains. We're not even, there's 30% of our community is just automatically marginalized by the rest of us. And we won't all concede that, but all of us who pay attention will concede that. But on the street, on the day-to-day, do you have problems in Lafayette?
I would say that it's not to be just minimized, and I'm Louis Ali from the Hot Black Coffee Party think tank. is not to be minimized to just Lafayette, but throughout the country. Like, take for instance, no one has never officially asked black people if they really wanted to be citizens here. They conferred citizenship upon us after slavery. We were socially engineered into slavery, socially engineered to segregation, and now we've been systematically, for the past 40 years, socially engineered into integration. We had control of over 22 million acres of land in America after the Civil War. Well, now, with a larger
Let
population.
me hurry you up. I concede all that. You never had control over that land. We
Well-
gave you that to throw you off the
Well, not-
from the get-go. I
not-
concede that you're coming from behind the curve big time, so.
Well, let's talk about that, because the
That's-
reality is that black people in this country during the 1930s numbered around 17 million. With the 2 million Indians, we could call it 19 million. And the fact is, with strategic relationships with the Native Americans, including in Florida, we controlled up to 22 million acres of land. But the point is, if we control land, then we control production, which means that we could give jobs and families to our people. With integration, now we have less than 3 million acres of land with a larger population of people. We don't give jobs to our people. We're not asking you to give us a job, but we should be able to give a job to our own people. We can't do that now. Therefore, the young people, that ignorance that he talked about, that lack of knowledge of self, that not knowing self that he talked about, has happened tremendously over the last 40 years. And unfortunately, we've been very silent about it. How can we take personal responsibility if we don't own anything? And so, if you take for example in the state of Louisiana, Louisiana has like what they call the DBE program, the contractors program. But the vast majority of those contracts in the state, even on the federal level, definitely not on the local level, go to black contractors. Why is it important to have black contractors with contracts? Because black contractors employ black people.
Okay, let me, because we've got, a lot of people want to talk, and we only got 56 minutes. Let's talk about the economic situation in Lafayette. And in fact, statistics I've read recently are that it automatically, if the name is African American, it's 50% fewer callbacks on an identical resume. 50%. So straight off the bat, Brother Takuna, is that the first name?
Yes.
Okay. If his name's on the resume and everything is identical to me and my name is Ed, I'm getting called back 100% of the time. He gets called back 50 right off the bat. How do we is it that prevalent in Lafayette? And if it is, and this is not a how to fix it night, we're not giving no solutions tonight. Let's not even make believe we're going to reach a solution. But is it that bad in town now that unless the black community coalesces and forms its own economic engine, are we self-segregating that potential right now?
Let me address that from this perspective. If you want to keep it local, and you want to keep the local.
I do kind of want to make sure we stay at home because we're not, hopefully not ready for Ferguson.
Well, I do think that Brother Ali has some significant points that you can't ignore the broader picture. But if we want to zero in specifically in terms of locally, you asked whether you would be called readily, much more than I would because of the name. Well, that's true, but it's also another issue. Black people are right now dealing with the oppressive factors of cultural genocide. Many of us don't know who we are. Some of us are African American, some of us are black, some of us are colored, some of us are Negro, and the special ones are black Cajuns. So now the ridiculousness of that makes it very difficult for us to have a foundation that will galvanize us collectively and to have group responses for whatever we want to do. Now, the fact that the word Cajun and nigger are historically racial slur words, then how do you measure the real value of a people when they permit themselves to be relabeled into a historical racial slur that was the twin slur of the word nigger? Now, we oppose that word. We nationally, that word is still being challenged. Yet, you have young black people today think that there is no issue. Why? Because there's a lack of history, there's a lack of study, there's a lack of cultural value. That lack of history and cultural value has a direct tie to our economic energy, to our ability to work with one another, to respect one another, and to demand the kind of respect that you just suggest that we don't get. So when you have black folks who have made it, if they don't identify with the Cajun, Acadiana, Creole concept,
That's right.
they are going to be ostracized from any upward mobility.
Okay.
That's right.
You bring up, one of my further down the line questions a little bit is, how do you protect your own cultural identity and at the same time homogenize with mine? I don't want to give up, my name is Bowie, my parents, not my parents, but somewhere back in the food chain there, my relatives own slaves. But I don't want to change my name and disavow that, no more than I want you to change your name to Bruce Smith. How do you protect your culture, and how is that working? That you try, you're Rasta, you get picked on everywhere you go because of your hair, and you're black, so you got two strikes. And
That's right.
So I'm swinging two on you too.
The kids, to go back to the kids, what Brother Takuna said, the kids today and the culture, what I said that our kids are lost. Our kids call themselves the N-word, and white kids call themselves the N-word too. That's bad. So we're all mixed up. And another thing that he said, these people who make it, that are black, and they make it to these certain points in life, with these gifts that we have of authority, gifts that we have of being entertainers, actors, musicians, whatever we are, with these gifts come responsibilities. Some of these people who have these gifts haven't paid back their responsibility back to their communities. They're not giving back to their youth, to their children. Once they make it, then, okay, I made it, I'm out of here. And they're not looking back at these kids.
Education.
I'm sorry?
Don't you think some of that should be straight up education?
Well, yes, but we started in last place. And I hate to say that, but I'm gonna say it. That's what I'm here for, to tell you. We started in last place. We've always been behind. We never started second, third. We started dead last.
Yeah.
Dead last. So every day, he gotta try to be the first black man to do this. First black man to do that. She gotta try to be the first black woman to do this, to do that. Why couldn't he just be the first man, the first woman? We've never had that opportunity. We've never had. So that cultural genocide that you're talking about is all been implanted in us from the beginning. It's been implanted. Slavery, we mental slavery for the rest of our lives. And it's passed on to our children.
Now, Ed, you had said that we gave, speaking from a white person's,
That's me. I'm all white people tonight.
okay, you're all white, and Mr. Mighty. You said that we gave y'all that land. You
No,
lost.
I implied that the federal government manipulated whatever you thought you had access to, and you might have owned it. I don't mean to disparage the history. I don't know the history. I disclaimer from the beginning. I'm talking without knowing what I'm talking about to get feedback. But the ownership of land in the hands of African Americans is pretty nebulous, even when they got the deed, if you know what I'm saying. You got played
that's my
somewhere,
point.
because you don't own it now, you got played, and it was
Well, that's
due
my
to
point.
dilution, and I think Brother Takuna kind of referred to it as a cultural genocide.
That's
I think
my
that
point.
you got snookered.
We're having a conversation and we're putting the cart kind of before the horse. See,
Okay,
like,
good.
what I'm saying is that all of this is that he's talking about, unless we have some land to call our own, then the rest of the conversation could be considered as disingenuous and insincere, not on your part, but on white America's part. And I'm saying this.
Let me interject to the ownership of land. Let me ask you to encourage, because you obviously studied this, take ownership of the distribution of information. If you don't own physical dirt, but you own the way to get to people's minds, you want to own the airwaves, you want to be part of this broadband thing. You want to take AOC, and most of you are bloggers and you got internet, we got some local producers here, but own the intellectual airways, and you won't need to own the land.
Well, you said you weren't an expert, so we're gonna keep you at that. We need some land. I'm saying that only because.
I'm doing this to make you, because I'm casual.
Right, because you represent the white folk. And so we want to say it like that. But the thing about it is this here. We need some land to call our own. And see, here's the point. You are conferring citizenship on us. And this is what creates a conflict between white and black folk. and a disingenuous and dishonest conversation. Most of the time, black people don't tell white people what they think. And white people don't realize this, but the majority of the stuff that black people think, you confer it on them. You conferred citizenship on them.
Guilty as charged.
You forced us to be
Guilty as charged. I've already
citizens.
assigned.
You forced us to
It's
pay
where we
taxes.
started, it's where we started, that mentality we started from.
Well,
Who would
I
not
would
have
like
That's where we
free
at.
people.
I wanted to say something too. Of the Lafayette officers here, right where we're at, Lafayette, we have like 247 officers. 42 are African American, 199 are Caucasian, 25 female, and 6 is other. We have a serious issue with police department, not only in Lafayette, but in New Iberia. And one of the council person from New Iberia stated that, oh, well, we want calm, we want the protests to be calm. Well, why did you not tell that to the police officers who we as taxpayers are paying them for their salary? And you have my deepest sympathy, Mr. White, just like when your son got killed, from the hands of the New Iberia Police Department. That in itself we done protests, y'all have done everything possible, but who's controlling everything?
And that's the illusion that many black folks fall victim to, is that we got justice, all you got to do is follow the law. We got procedural justice, and that procedural justice oftentimes is blocked by economics, blocked by lack of information, blocked by access. So we don't really have justice. And the bottom line is, as long as there's an absence of justice, the presence of peace will always be negated by natural law. We will not have economic justice unless there's justice within the banking system and the trade industry. There is nothing that black folks can boast about with any degree of intelligence that says that this system is set up for their uplifting, for their protection.
I got that. Let's take that a little bit. You're talking kind of globally. Is Lafayette in line with the rest of the country in that regard?
For the most part. You say you live on the south side. I used to live on the south side too. I used to live in Broadmoor subdivision.
How'd that work? And I'm not
It was
being facetious.
interesting. Well, no,
I bet it was,
interesting
because
because-
a handful of African Americans in my neighborhood.
Right, it's very
Watch
few.
everybody drives by, slow down. What are they doing? They don't drive by slow by my house, but when they drive by the black house, they got to look.
Oh, it's always interesting. I can tell you about my experiences living on the south side.
Excellent.
Okay. So, I grew up in mixed neighborhoods because my father was in the military. So I'd always lived on bases. So I'd never experienced a very segregated town until I came to Lafayette. So it was interesting, I see all these people here and that's cool, but we're the only black people on the street. That was a very strange thing to me. And then being hollered at, people passing by, let me get some of that brown sugar. And, it's like, wait, what is that? That's not okay. So Louisiana is interesting culturally, but especially in Lafayette because it's such deep segregation, okay? And on top of that, not seeing people who look like you around you is somewhat jarring. It can be a jarring experience, like, well, why aren't there people around here like me? Or people who don't look like me, they don't expect me to be here, or they don't think I belong here. Like, you shouldn't be here, I remember being stopped by a cop, okay, in 2006. This cop said I ran a stop sign, which I know I didn't. And he was like, well, give me your ID, So he was writing down the ticket and everything. Now, where I was 2 blocks from my house. You could literally see my house from where we were. And he had the nerve to ask me, what business do you have in this neighborhood?
Sure.
What business do you have in this neighborhood? Because if you lived here, you would know, well, there's one of the black families there.
Well, if he was bugging you, he would have shot him.
Oh, definitely.
I only mean that marginally facetiously.
Why would that be?
Well, because you're a young African-American and a
That's the
car, that
problem.
makes you, and I'm
Yeah,
I'm
aggression.
being overly verbose and hyperbolic about this, but
Statistics says that.
if I were
Right.
black and I tried to when I realized that this first conversation, I had to have some idea how I would expect the African-American community to react, I'd be pissed off about what's going on around the nation, but coming back to home, I'm upset that I don't have a fair chance, but I'm asking, is it really, you stop 2 blocks from your house and what are you doing in the neighborhood? That's happening and I'm not aware of that. This is kind of enlightening to me. And I'm not naive.
Yeah,
but,
it happened for me growing up in Lafayette. I can just say as far as us,
me and him, we grew up and knowing that, okay, the south side is this part of town and the north side is this part of town, and this is where all the black people, you even ask UL students that are not from here, that are, you know, that are get, you know, close to people in Lafayette, they'll be, okay, why are all the businesses on this side? I'd never been to this side of town before. I didn't know these black folks existed in town, and it is something that we grown into as growing up, even as you noticing that the south side has all the businesses, all the entertainment, everything, they have all the things to offer. Why don't we have this on our side of town? We used to have things on our side of town, but as far as now,
that's just the way it is now?
Exactly.
You guys are activists enough to step up to the table tonight, so you're obviously thinking, this has got to change.
yeah, I mean, obviously, I feel like on our side of town is not, well, we both grew up on the north side of like around Moss, and we just noticed how things have changed from us. Like, we used to have a movie theater, we used to have a mall, we used to have actual economy things like on that side of town. I feel like, why Lafayette, if it's going to grow, because I love the city, why not invest the same type of money and things on the other side to make the city grow as far as it
As a
can?
matter kind of curiosity on that line of thought, who are you asking, and what are people responding when you say, look, I'm a young guy on the north side, and I want the north side to step up. I don't want it to be mistreated. And I know, to kind of follow that up, are you being respected when you say the north side needs to hear something? Now, there's this whole north side thing going on from Upper Lafayette, and they call themselves that so they wouldn't be associated with you.
That's right.
Straight up. They don't call it the other side of town for no reason. They call it Upper Lafayette.
That's just how it was. That's how things are made. That's just how it is. Like,
That's not
when
just
the
how
mall,
it needs to
the
be.
mall,
That's the
everything.
point, though.
Right, it's not.
You
It's
guys
not.
are
But that's how we
accepting
just were.
it, and you're willing to come in here and say, we want to do something.
Exactly, and it shouldn't be like that. It should just be.
I'm not even going to go to the solution,
another
but I'm
way-
kind of nice to hear that somebody's got it, is a little bit pissed off.
Another way of asking the question, if I may take an opportunity and maybe paraphrase, is to, you're asking basically, you know, and generally, you want a report card on Lafayette in terms of public
That is an
relations.
excellent way to put it.
Okay,
How are we doing?
well, let me say, I think Lafayette has an F minus. And it's taken all the tests twice. With the illusion of freedom, the illusion of economic progress, the illusion of a better relationship, and I use that word candidly, illusion, because it's not real. You know, we living under a system in which Lafayette is a prime example of what took place in slavery. The only way that you could take black people and make black people behave the way that black people behave now was through a process, taking a strong people and bringing them to a process to produce a slave. Well, it was when they reached that condition, when we began to act and respond to the condition of the process of being made a slave, then we began to get the kind of response that white folks were acceptable, that found acceptable. Well, Lafayette, in this report card in terms of public relationships and race relationships here, Lafayette is a modern day nigger-making process for black people all over again, because it does not matter what economic progress you make, it does not matter what political aspirations you might have, it does not matter what side of town you live on. If you don't know who you are, you don't accept who you are, then you're still just another kind of slave in another kind of modern day environment. And that's what it is. So we got black people, and if I can use this analogy, we got black people that are ducks, and we got white folks that are chickens. And then they tell us that we both the same because we both lay eggs. But if you sit on a chicken egg, a chicken will come out. If you sit on a duck egg, a duck will come out. There are uniqueness that must be presented to each group of people. There is no integration in Lafayette. There is no true integration in America. And there is no responsible relationship or attitude in the entities of Lafayette to bring about any balance and fairness and justice for all the people. And that's how
Every word of that I heard made a certain amount of sense to me, and I have no rebuttal other than, holy crap, that was a mouthful of in your face. It looks pretty bleak from your perspective. We can't fix what we're doing.
It's not for you to fix.
It's not for you to fix. We have two engines, and we need to get those engines working harmoniously, at least, as opposed to friction.
But
We
you know
can't
how we
integrate
could, you know how we
them,
could
yeah.
fix it just shortly, and I know you don't want to get into solution, but you know how we, you know how we
It's
can,
stupid. I just
you
think
know
it's
how we
right.
can fix it quickly? You know, we can fix it quickly first by accepting who we are. But we have an institutional approach to our madness that keeps us in that state of madness. For instance, you got coming up pretty soon. Ask black, you don't have to teach black folks anything about the 4th of July. Well, listen, the 4th of July is a form of independence or a form of white folk separation. We need to separate from white folks for our healing. We need to be here. We need to separate from white folks. Now, they tell us that separation is bad. They tell us that if we separate, that's some type of strange monster called reverse racism. But then the United States is based on separation. The whole so-called Independence Day is a group of white folks, 13 little colonies breaking from the British Empire. For what reason? To separate, to become the United States.
Okay.
Well, if the 13 little colonies had any claims for separation to unite among themselves, then you look at the dilemma of black people, look at the condition of black people, and we need to separate from those forces that keeps us from uniting, keep us from doing economically just things for ourselves.
That's almost impossible.
Well-
The idea, I heard, I forgot, somebody local said something today that for a whole week I tried to support nothing but black communities, businesses, and I couldn't do it. It was literally impossible to function.
Why?
But separation
Couldn't
doesn't
find all the
mean
services they needed. And this might have been, in fact, Michelle Obama said some stuff today
Well-
that got the Republicans all fired up. So how do we?
Well, see, that's why we started by talking about integration. There used to be black businesses, but under integration, we were betrayed by many of our so-called intellectuals.
Right.
And now black businesses are no longer in our community, but there's a solution.
We got dollar stores.
There's a solution. We could rebuild them if we start back being honest. Look, you give tax credits to people to come to what they call the hood. Why not give tax credits to the people who are in the hood to rebuild the hood?
Yeah.
You give tax credits to foreigners, or you used to. See, how did the black businesses get killed? When the Viet Cong came back to America, they gave them low-interest bank loans or no-interest bank loans. They closed down the Dixie Cup lady, the pickle lady, the Dorito lady, who used to be in all black communities selling little goods, and we went into each other's
okay.
house.
Yeah.
We didn't
I got
sell crack cocaine in those days. You could sleep with the doors open
Sure.
in the so-called hood.
Yeah.
But once the crack cocaine hit, in the nerve of some people, black intellectuals now, who would say, I'm a Ronald Reagan Republican, when we know that Ronald Reagan and Oliver North had a large hand in putting crack cocaine in our communities. So our businesses were systematically destroyed. Now, when Minister Farrakhan had the first Million Man March, the theme was atonement, reconciliation, and responsibility. We could rebuild our communities, but here's what has to happen. White people don't really understand us. And we obviously don't understand you either. So what we need to do is, you need to heal your people. Your people are giving you hell as it is. Our people are giving us hell. We know how to heal our people in the nation. And so the idea of integration became a popular idea when it was co-opted from Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. I'm saying that the idea, the cultural, social engineering idea of today, and it's right here on this show, you get to tell everybody that black people really don't want to be integrated. They want to be separated so that they can take personal responsibility for their community, so that they can employ these young people. Young people cannot respect their parents when their parents don't own anything.
Exactly.
And the reality is, when you, quote unquote, not you, but came up with this integration business, you took the black man out of the house and you gave black women welfare checks, and they took the discipline out the house, took the structure out the house, destroyed our family. They're raising their children alone. There are things that government could do, but it's a lot that we could do. And one of the things that we could really do is just be honest. It has nothing to do with hate of your skin color whatsoever. It has everything to do with, in order for these young men to respect me, or my sons to respect me or daughters, I have to be able to show them that I can provide something called the future for them.
Exactly.
Black children don't have a future in America. They're putting them on Ritalin in Lafayette.
Okay, in Lafayette in particular, the young people that I know, and we have quite a few young people here at AOC, and all of the African Americans in the young group, every one of them, when they go home, they go through a neighborhood I'm afraid to walk in. And if I would be afraid to walk in if I was them. They walk through gunfighting. People, that's not gunfighting. They hear gunshots. People are offering them drugs, not every block. But it ain't no normal life that I know of for these young people. And they come here and ask for jobs, and I give them a couple hours when I can, and they get a little responsibility. But then they still go back. I don't understand how they'd expect
trying hard.
Well, how do they expect to get out of the neighborhood when that's what they got to go through?
But see, here-
when you live fighting the bear every day, and the bear goes away, you're still on edge.
I just
When you
want
live
to. I
that
just want to
way.
tell you this because you sound like you really want to help black folk.
I want to know.
No, but I want you to know.
I
Think
really-
about this here. Integration works like a blood diamond line in South Africa, where you, white society, suck out all the black talent, suck out all the black athletes, suck out all the black intellectuals, and you buff them up and shine them up, and they run down the Raging Cajuns football field.
Yeah.
And you
Okay.
pack that stadium, and you give them sometime even a poor little white girl who couldn't keep up with white flight, because white flight takes place whenever you see 8 black people show up and it's 100 white people run because of genetic annihilation. They want to be white. And if you mix up with me, you ain't going to be white no more. And so the thing of it is this. If you want to help black people, then you have to stop taking out all the talented intellectuals, taking out all the talented athletes, and you have to give us the best of us to develop us so that when you see us in this neighborhood, as she was seen, knowing that she deserves to be there because she's equally rooted in a knowledge of herself. But right now, the way it is right now, you can't respect somebody who is non-productive. And the black community is not producing right now. And we deserve an opportunity
I
to
would
produce.
suspect to add to your comment, and I'll come back to you real quick, I appreciate that, but the idea that we are running a capitalist system
Blood
is a
diamond.
huge vital problem. Blood diamond, okay. That's a problem that's bigger than race, but it forces race to be, race is the linchpin or the cornerstone of the capitalist problem. I
But
mean,
you get the
these
benefit
two
of the
things.
talented ones in your community. I
Sure,
don't get the
I
benefit.
the capitalists would get the benefit. and-
White
and in your
supremacy has a
community,
black
in your
quarterback.
case, As Russell pointed out earlier.
Did you hear what I said, sir?
I'm sorry.
White supremacy has a black quarterback. You see, this is about teams. I'm on the black team, you're on the white team. I can't recruit your talent on my team, you can recruit my talent on your team.
Because I got more money.
Not because you have more money, but because you understand that a black quarterback for white supremacy can get your team ideologies and philosophy further down the field. The best of our talent is not necessarily working for the advancement of our people. That's why I said we've been betrayed by our intellectuals. I think it was Tiger Woods that said he's not black, he's a
Combination.
In the
Caucasian.
neighborhood, I forgot you already. That kind of thing is what I'm hearing. That
Right.
the people who get out stay out.
Well,
But let's look at it locally. How many white folks you know, given the historical reality of the two-word Cajun and nigger, how many white folks you think would send their children to a university with a mascot, home of the raging niggers?
None.
How many white
People that would, I'll tell you
how
straight
many
up, I
white
know
folks
some
you know
people
would
that
walk
would.
into any of the fast food places and buy a nigger burger, curly nigger fries? You see, everywhere you see the word Cajun,
That's right.
you replace it with the word nigger, and you got you got a microscopic view of what black folks see who know their history and culture. How can our young people develop a sense of pride, a sense of direction? How can you take black athletes from other cities, other towns who have no knowledge of this history, and then serve them up as models to our children? UL students are dumbfounded with the reality of what this word and this historical thing means. And then you hear on the flip side of the page how they get upset with the use of the word nigger. Well, then they are modeling a version of that word nigger, but from a white perspective. And that's the black quarterback. You see, that's the quarterback he's talking about. That's a system of white supremacy that takes the best of what we have, reshape it, mold it, and then take that talent and that energy and use against us. So therefore, there is no upward mobility that we can count on. So our young people today will argue with me if I say to them, if I see them with a Raging Cajun shirt. They'll argue with me today. It doesn't mean anything. Why does it doesn't mean anything? You could not tell a Jewish person that with a swastika on their T-shirt that doesn't mean anything. The Jewish community would be in an uproar in a matter of minutes.
Exactly. 'Cause
But
we're
language
uneducated.
changes though.
It was just that we're uneducated. Me, personally, like I witnessed that going on in Lafayette. I witnessed that kids in middle school that having certain talents being approached by coaches from predominantly white schools like St. Thomas More. Okay, if we'll give you a scholarship, academic scholarship, but they honestly not getting an academic scholarship, they just being paid to produce. Exactly. And I feel like you're right. We are uneducated as a people, and we are uneducated. We do not know our history, and we don't know the facts behind us, which is a self-unconsciousness that is wrong, and that's a cycle of not black people not progressing. And me, I attend Grambling State. And one of the reasons why I chose not to go to UL was because, number one, I didn't want to be home, and number two, I knew the history behind the word Cajun. I was taught in my household, it's all about the knowledge. We don't have nobody is giving our youth, and that's what we're trying to do, is give the youth and knowledge and empowerment that they need so that they can succeed all in one. Because Lafayette don't really have that. We don't have nothing that focuses on our youth as far as athletics, as far as music, as far as art, and as far as technology. And we're trying to basically use that to come together and to provide something for our youth, because there's a lot of talent, there's a lot of creativity, and there's a lot of culture. Just not among Lafayette, and among our black.
There are a lot of things. You just don't necessarily hear about everything. And that's one thing I noticed in Lafayette, is that things are kind of disjointed. Because there are businesses. I own a black business, Miss G Music, thank you very much. And there are different groups that focus on the arts or focus on sports and all those kind of things. It's there, but it's kind of disjointed. So it's kind of like how you said earlier about information. Exactly. A lot of times information is not disseminated in our community, or people are too tired, or they're on the bottom rung of, I gotta put food on the table. I can't think about, I can't afford anything with sports, I can't afford anything extra, I don't have a car right now. So you're focused on barely just making money, which goes back to the whole, in a way, the land thing. A lot of the land that blacks and other minorities had in the past was taken by the government with interstate programs and all these other public things, So they basically would just steal a lot of black property and say, well, go find somewhere to live. We're not going to give you equal housing or give you the money worth of your actual land. We're just going to take it, because it's the thing that the U.S. can do. The U.S. can still do that. Just decide, you know what? We're going to extend I-49. We're going to take all this stuff off of Evangeline Thruway, and if you have property, well, we might give you money. We might. So it's like the sense of wealth not being there. And in the new age, like, the internet is the best thing that's ever happened to anybody, because it's going to put you on an equal playing field, because the internet currently is open to anybody. It's not owned by white people, it's not owned by black people, it's not owned by Asian people. And that's really one of the most important things, and I agree with you on that, is that intellectual property or information dissemination is going to be the thing that will bring us up. It's more than just land, even though land is important, because you can build wealth with land. You have equity, you have, all these wonderful things that come along with owning property. So you can build wealth. You can have something to give to your children and not just die broke. And then your children are broke and they die broke too. You have something to build off of.
Now, Brother Jay had gave me some research on, according to the Washington Post, where they stated that there are the most racist area. That the most racist area they have here is in Lafayette, from the Google search that they've done.
Oh, right, definitely.
Referring to the N-word, So they've been knowing what was going on, and they say that Lafayette is the epitome of racism.
But imagine the use of the
At
N-word.
the same time,
I would
The
suggest
neg-
that doesn't mean diddly squat,
Well,
because these
and
two guys use, I don't know you
And I
specifically.
assume you would
but-
suggest that it don't mean diddly Scott, because
Because
it
there's
doesn't
so many
matter to
people
you.
use that word in the black community.
Well, but then they say
and
from a
those numbers go
negative,
up, that-
they say from a negative tone.
Well, the negative tone, I might agree if they can measure tone.
They did,
I'm just
they
saying,
did, they
Use
did.
the word. That
They
word
use
doesn't
control,
sound like
they
saying
use-
water.
they use controls for it.
If there's tone, then we got a different argument.
Well, and I'm sure Brother Jay could give you that report right after this segment is over with. But Mr. White, on behalf of you having your child killed by the police,
I was listening and we talked about in this area. My son, what I did is I took my son and I raised him in the so-called hood. I have 9 children. I took my children, and we didn't have to live there, but I took my children, I put them there. I raised them there, and I worked down in this area. Actually, I used to work at UMC. I'm a substance abuse professional counselor. And you can see the difference when people in this area, because I'm not from this area, I moved down in this area, so when I'm working at UMC hospital, I can see when white persons comes in to see me, right? They look for my boss. See? They don't recognize or see me as the boss, so they're looking for my boss. So when they go look for my boss.
And that happens just automatically.
Yeah, that's
Automatically.
automatically. And so and if I'm saying something to them, they want to say, well, who's in charge? Me.
Yes,
That's me. You know?
There's disbelief
So
in that
I
part.
still want to talk to someone. So like I said, but I took my kids, I put them in the so-called hood. And in doing that, right, to see what would happen and to let them understand, you know, it is true, it is a fact, because they wasn't raised that way until we got there, so I put them in that. And they got to see that side of it. Then I took them out and go back, right, and you know what? They got stopped by the police, no matter what side we lived in, no matter where we lived. You know, then my son, that's how they killed my son. My son was walking from a store.
from a store.
At 11 o'clock at night. 11 o'clock at night. Somebody said there was a fight going on. And since then it's seen 2 African Americans, they say, my son fit the description. But the description, right, he weighed 150 to 200 pounds more than my son, so I didn't fit the description. Because of black. That's the only description he could have fit.
Yeah.
Right. He had a shirt on, my son's shirt on. See, so I'm trying to see how could they come up with that. But then everything else from that point, you know, it went soft. Because it was the only reason they stopped him, because they were black. And now that's the truth be told. The only reason why they stopped him, because it was black. Because if they would have took him back to the store, they would have found out he had nothing to do with that. And the only reason why they beat him,
And killed him.
again, because he was black. They murdered him. They said he committed suicide. Handcuffed behind him. They were handcuffed behind him. They
Oh,
said,
so you're the Mr. White, okay, now I'm putting 3 and 3 together and coming up with the real number.
they said,
Oh, yeah, that's a little curious.
Yeah, they searched him twice, and supposedly now, found a small amount of narcotics, and I hear everybody saying it was marijuana, but I'm just, you know, they say it was a small amount of narcotics. When they searched him the 7th time, supposedly they found crack cocaine, or they say cocaine, right? But looking at, and looking at everything, that's what you see. But like I said, my son wasn't raised in that. That's why they can't criminalize my son. See how they come out with everybody and say this and that. Can't do that to my son. See, because he wasn't raised that way. And when they look at him, he was an intelligent young man. And he was African American, he was black. See, everything they say he didn't know, my son knew he was because his daddy taught him. My son knew his history because daddy taught him, and when he went to school and they were saying stuff, my son would say, wait a minute, did it have anything to do with black history? And in this system, they would get upset with him. They would get upset with him when he said, well, no, that's not a part of my culture. So when we're going to talk about things that really pertain to me, so that's why I think that the officers, not saying what color they are, but why else would they have a problem with it?
See, but let's get back to the report card. See, the report card got an F, and Lafayette gets an F because of what you just heard from Mr. White. You see, because there's an attitudinal thing. It's a stereotypical perception of black folks that allows black folks not only to get killed by others, but to kill themselves. As long as we stay stuck into the syndrome of a nigger don't learn, a nigger don't read, a nigger don't care about anything, and a nigger ain't fit to be protected by the law. And this is what we're dealing with. So when we talk about attitudinal positions. We can't talk about that separately from land and independence. To talk about all of the concerns that we have in our community and separate land ownership from that is like getting virtual food. You still with that idea, you're going to starve to death. You see, you need to get some meat, you need to get some reality, because landowners own businesses. Landowners are taxpayers. Landowners are respected. Landowners impact the municipalities that controls them. Landowners, you see, and as long as we are taught to never push, for land and independence from control of land, we will never, ever change our situation. And I would say we will never change our situation as long as we buy into this false concept of integration. And I want to say this quickly. Separation does not mean isolation. Separation does not mean isolation. I can separate from you and I can deal with you in fair trade and I can respect you as a human being. I can respect everything that is good about your humanity. But my need to separate from myself, and deal with my people is a need and a necessity for me to be whole and for my people to be whole.
I'm going to come back to that. Before I do, I'd like to tell you, Mr. White, thanks for being here. I got a lot of respect for what you're going through. Not a good situation, and I hope the outcome works out the way it should. What I'm hearing tonight, and we got about...
That's what you're saying, the way it should. See, that's where the problem lies at. See, because when you look at it, and just dealing with that locally, right? The white people will go on there and say, well, he was a thug. Not even knowing my son.
Sure,
white people go on there and say, well, oh, he had the gun. He had to have a gun because he was black. That's what they do, carry a gun. And like I said, you see, and it's all over, and you look at it, and they will come back and say, well, he sold drugs. He was a drug dealer. So it was his time.
Justifiable homicide.
And that's the word on the street. That's pretty much how people
you pick it up when you go like social media.
Racial bias.
But when you talk about, when you go to the black side, they understand, because
that's the point.
When you go to the black side, they
understand.
They had no right to stop him.
Right.
If he was in a white neighborhood.
Is the case still alive? It's still okay. We got a few minutes left, and I'm not too sure about managing the time, and I know that, sister, you hadn't said a word yet. Would you got anything you want to add to this? I'm seeing waving, it looks like 10 minutes. Shake your head if it's 10 minutes. There you go. We got 10 minutes.
I know
so
we're
you
talking
feel
about
free.
issues specific to Lafayette, but it's really not. This is global. And if we even go to the recent occurrence in Israel, where the young black Ethiopian Jew was beaten, we see the same thing going on
Wherever there's black.
wherever there's that black-white dynamic. So it's really not an issue only specific to Lafayette. I'm from Los Angeles. I've been pulled over by the police, and I'm a woman.
Driving while black.
Driving while black in a white neighborhood as well as the black neighborhood, and the police were belligerent. Without even knowing what is going on, they approach me in a very disrespectful way. So it's not an issue specific to Lafayette. It's not an issue specific to young black males. It's an issue specific to that black-white dynamic. And separation is the best and only solution. And until black people accept their own and become themselves, stop trying to assimilate into the Caucasian mindset.
This has been very enlightening to me in that respect. I did not expect to hear this many people effectively saying separation is a better solution than integration. So this, in that respect, I'm not through. You don't jump on me yet. We have a long history, so I'm going to treat her different than I treat everybody
and he better be really careful on how he treat me. Dr. Williams.
I didn't give you the floor.
The great honorable Dr. Williams, who's a judge.
Talk about not respecting the man.
I don't know if you could see his picture, but Dr. Williams had done a report. And in the report, he had stated that Judge Marilyn Castile of the 15 JDC, she was given out 3 times the sentencing of that from black to white, and that in itself was just the tip of the iceberg. Louisiana has the highest incarceration rate in the world. Louisiana unjustly denies parole eligibilities to over half of its prisoners.
Let's talk about that for a second then, without naming names, but the criminal justice system, and let's talk about that, in particular in Lafayette. And I am more or less a fan of the cops, the police. I think in general they have one of the hardest jobs out there. And 99% of them are not crazy, and the crazy ones are pretty darn crazy. And there's a certain amount of power dynamic that happens with the whole thing. So it's not necessarily that our police is working the way it should, but not banging on them particularly. But is it a bad situation in Lafayette? You're getting stopped like an ordinary thing, whether you're black or white, it's just a...
Well, Lafayette,
beat you
LPD is
up,
kind
or-
of,
Yeah, it
LPD
happened.
has issues for sure, but I mean, we know proportionally it's gonna affect the black community more than even the white community. But LPD is kind of bad all around. I mean, not all of them, we know it's not all of them, because I'm very pro-reform.
Right,
We need to change some things. I'm not anti-cop, I'm pro-reform. So just because I'm saying we need to have changes doesn't mean I hate cops. I have friends who are cops and I respect them. I respect anybody who's in their job and holding themselves to a high standard of taking care of their community and upholding the law.
There's nothing wrong
But
with
the
that.
issue is people,
Yeah.
right, people not upholding the law or feeling like they're allowing racial bias to affect what they do. So a lot of times if you have somebody who doesn't understand, like how you said, sometimes white people don't understand black people. So you may feel like something's aggressive or overly threatening when really it isn't. It's just like, well, no, it's just a black person talking to you, but you feel threatened because you're not used to black people, or because you have taken in the stereotypes that, well, we're going to be aggressive, we're sexual predators and all this extra stuff, or we're the
Well, this guy
magical
right here scares me
Negro,
to death.
you know?
I'm scared. When he talks to me, I'm scared. Straight
You
up.
just talk about it, but that ain't nothing.
You come across, you're as forceful as he is, you're as studied as he is, but he's dressed different from me. He looks like he don't want to know me. My immediate white guy reaction, and I'm not literally afraid of him. My gut reaction, sister, you're not cool right from the get-go. You look warm and fuzzy. You look like a businessman. You look like a couple young up-and-comers. Russell and I got a big history, but I'll see him. He don't want to be like me.
Yeah, but see, he's part of our family.
That's the problem. You got to get me to buy into this kind of protectionist culture, not trying to rub it into me.
There is something that we should say while we're here tonight.
That's what, say it, brother, we run out of time.
We got the Honorable Minister LUS Farrakhan coming to Washington, D.C. on the 10th of October of this year, the commemoration of the Million Man March. And the theme is justice or else. He wants to put before the world how black people need a land to call their own, so that we can take personal responsibility and not blame you white folk, no more, ever. But the thing of it is that, keep this in mind, you got white people who are liberals that want black people as pets. You get some black people that you can pet and rub up and say these are the
Oh, I've
special.
got a lot of liberal friends that want to have a.
And then
important
as
to
pets. Then you got another group of Caucasians that are like wolves, mean Republicans. Neither one of them,
I love you.
neither one of them are
That
helping
station
us.
alone was worth the whole night.
We would like to be separated into a land to call our own, but I really thank you for creating such a forum where you would at least listen and give your
Well, that's
listening
what it's all
audience an
about. And let me
opportunity.
say before we do wrap it up, that you're all welcome to come back to do another one collectively, or this is not the end. And I'm not sure we even scratched the surface on how a lot of you feel tonight, and I still didn't get enough from the sister. Young brothers didn't get a turn yet.
Right,
And
and
you
we
had your own
still need
dadgum
to
show.
have a discussion with the Jane Swift, with the Upper Lafayette. This discussion needs to be with the Caucasians. Also, not just you as the interpreter, we need to have the Jane Swift with the Upper Lafayette right here when we decide to do another discussion. We need to bring them.
I'll take that under advisement, and have no problem doing that, or taking it to a larger. We got 2 or 3 minutes. Looks like 2, is that the end or 2 credits? Because credits are like 30 seconds. All right, yeah, I didn't get a name from anybody. My name's Ed Bowie, I don't ever know if I said that either. But call me Uncle Eddie for the sake of the TV show, but my name is Ed Bowie. If you want to do this individually, if you guys at home are interested in the program, interested in this topic, there's a Facebook thing, leave your comments there. If you want to do an Uncle Eddie episode, let me know. And to this group, and I mean this from the bottom of my heart, I know that it was not easy for any one of you to come up here and speak on behalf of, let's just say, black people to the white guy. There's dynamics involved that I'm not immune to, and so stepping up exposes all of us to a certain amount of awareness that we may not like, and I respect you for taking the time to come in here. And I'll point to the empty chairs. I sent 15 invitations. Of the 15 I sent, only 2 people from the invitation list are here, and the rest are guests. The other people because they couldn't make the schedule or they didn't want to face the public and have a conversation that's like picking at a scab. And this is picking a scab. Let's be honest. Now, I'm leaving here certainly smarter than when I came, and I'm almost out of time. But anybody, you got something you want to say last minute? Don't leave it to me to stretch now. I gave you the whole.
Somebody say we're talking about the police department. One thing we say that that I know all cops not bad. I keep hearing all cops not bad, but yet and still you can let someone violate another person's right but not say something. So what does that make that cop?
Bad, bad.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay,
we-
we're getting the old wrap it up time. I don't know if I can look over my shoulder and see if they're rolling credits or not, but if you're here, I'd like to tell you thanks. Tune in on the YouTube channel. I think we're probably out. If we're not out, this show will replay on AOC. It'll also be available on our AOC YouTube channel.